The auditorium was full, every seat taken. Cameras were set, lights bright. The banners behind the stage read, "Global Leadership and Responsibility in the 21st Century." Students, politicians, journalists, and even a few foreign diplomats were seated. Some came for the politics. Others came for the surprise guest, Denzel Washington. He entered without fanfare. No dramatic music, no entourage, just a calm, thoughtful presence. He wore a dark suit, simple but sharp. He smiled and shook hands with the moderator and his co-panelist, Senator J.D. Vance. The crowd whispered as he sat. Phones flashed. The live stream had already crossed 300,000 viewers. This wasn't just another campus debate. This was an event. The moderator welcomed them both. Today we speak about responsibility, personal, political, and public. Let's begin with values. Senator Vance. J.D. Vance leaned into his mic, confident, his smile sharp. "I believe in hard truths," he began. "Discipline, faith, family, values that built this nation. But too often, they're replaced by soft talk and Hollywood fantasy." Some students clapped, others frowned. Then he turned to Denzel. "And with respect, Mr. Washington," Vance said, "you've spoken often about morality and responsibility. But isn't it strange? You've played gangsters, corrupt cops, vigilantes, and yet you speak of integrity? Isn't that a little hypocritical?" The room froze. Whispers turned into dead silence. Even the camera crew looked up. The tension was sharp. Denzel didn't flinch. He looked at the senator quietly, then slowly leaned forward and folded his hands. "When I speak about integrity," Denzel began, "it's not because I've played saints. It's because I've lived far from perfect." His voice was calm but powerful. "I was raised by a single mother. She cleaned houses so I could go to school. I made mistakes. I got into trouble. Real trouble. Not the kind you watch in movies. The kind where you sit in a cell and wonder, what went wrong?" The silence deepened. The senator's smile faded slightly. "I met a professor," Denzel continued. "Dr. Melvin Patrick. He didn't judge me. Told me I wasn't born to lie. I was born to speak truth. That conversation changed my life." Paused, looked out over the crowd. "You think because I act, I haven't lived? You think because I played broken men, I don't know what it means to heal?" The students were locked in. "Seen men lie to cameras and call it leadership. I've seen others speak truth and get ignored because they had no power. What I learned is this: responsibility is not about what you say when you're in control. It's about what you carry when no one's watching." A few claps started in the back, or followed. But before it could build, a voice spoke from the shadows. "It's right." Heads turned. From the back row, an older man stood slowly. Gray hair, cane in hand, eyes focused. The crowd stared. The moderator's eyes widened. "Is that?" Denzel turned, his face softened instantly. He whispered, barely audible, "Dr. Patrick." A hush fell over the room. Dr. Melvin Patrick made his way to the front slowly. The audience parted to let him through. No one said a word. He reached the microphone, his voice firm but gentle. "Senator Vance," he said, "I taught ethics here for 43 years. I taught Denzel, not in theory, but in failure. I saw his worst moments, and I saw him rise." He looked at Denzel with pride. "Responsibility isn't something you wear like a title. It's something you live through pain, correction, and grace." Then he turned back to Vance. "You speak of truth like it's a weapon. He speaks of truth like it's a mirror." The room erupted in applause, deep, emotional, raw. Vance stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Cameras zoomed in on his face, silent, exposed. Denzel stood slowly and walked to the front. He gently took Dr. Patrick's arm and helped him down the stairs. "You still keeping me honest, sir?" he asked with a smile. "Always," the professor replied. But just as the applause faded and the moderator tried to regain order, a man in a staff badge leaned in toward Denzel. He handed him a small, sealed envelope. No name, just one sentence on the outside. "What you said tonight just saved lives." Denzel stared at it, and the room once again fell silent. The backstage was a controlled storm. Crew members rushing, security whispering into earpieces, journalists typing live updates. But in the center of it all, Denzel Washington stood still, the small envelope in his hand like it weighed 100 pounds. He didn't open it, right? Away. Dr. Patrick was sitting beside him, sipping water, catching his breath. "That envelope," he said, nodding to it, "looks heavier than the truth you just dropped out there." Denzel smiled faintly. The timing feels loaded. A producer knocked gently on the dressing room door. "Mr. Washington, CNN and BBC are requesting statements. Also, the dean would like to thank you personally." Denzel raised a hand. "Not now." He turned the envelope over once more. It was plain, ivory white, sealed carefully. No name, no sender. Just 7 words printed in a steady hand on the front. "What you said tonight just saved lives." He opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, clean, anonymous. It read, "Your words about responsibility reached more than just students tonight. They reached a hidden room across the ocean. A room with men watching, planning, and because of you, something dark has been paused, but it won't stay paused for long. They will watch you now. Be careful who you trust." Denzel read it again and again. He looked at Dr. Patrick. "You ever see something like this?" The professor leaned over, read the note, and frowned. "That's no student prank." Knock came again, this time louder. "Mr. Washington, the vice chancellor is here." Dr. Patrick opened the door just enough to peek out. "He needs a moment." They shut it again. Denzel stood up and walked to the mirror. The note trembled slightly in his hand, though he didn't feel scared. Not yet. "What room?" he whispered to himself. "What men?" Dr. Patrick now stood too. "You think this is about politics?" "No," Denzel replied. "This feels bigger." There was a knock again, softer, more cautious. "Mr. Washington," a young woman's voice. "I'm the journalism major who helped run the live stream. Someone left a data drive for you at the tech desk. I was told to deliver it personally." Denzel opened the door slowly. The student, maybe 20, stood nervously holding a small black USB drive. She handed it to him and quickly looked both ways. "Down the hall, there was no name on it," she said. "But the person who dropped it off, he wore a badge from a European embassy. I don't know which one. He disappeared right after." Before Denzel could respond, she stepped back. "Be careful, sir," she added, and vanished into the hallway. Denzel looked at Dr. Patrick, holding the envelope in one hand, the USB in the other. "Someone really doesn't want this being ignored," he muttered. They plugged the drive into a laptop backstage. No folder name, just one video file. They clicked play. The screen filled with a grainy surveillance feed, a windowless room somewhere underground. Men in suits speaking in Russian, another in French. English subtitles auto-scrolling. "The campus forum tonight. It is him we underestimated. The impact if he connects with the student networks. Or leaks the memo, silence him early. Discredit him first, then suppress. We've bought senators before. What's one actor?" Denzel's heart slowed. Dr. Patrick leaned closer. "My God." The footage cut out. A blank screen followed with one last message. "You just entered something real. Walk carefully." Denzel stared at the laptop, then to the drive in his hand. Outside, the moderator's voice echoed over the PA. "We'll now resume the panel with closing remarks." The show was still going. The public part, the scripted part. But backstage, reality had shifted. "Do you want to go back out there?" Dr. Patrick asked. Denzel paused. not as the guest anymore. It's the problem they didn't expect. He tucked the USB and the letter into his coat pocket and walked toward the stage. But someone else was watching, a man leaning in the shadows near the emergency exit, speaking quietly into an earpiece. "They've seen the drive," the man said. "Phase 2 begins now." The second mic was never ours. The audience didn't notice the difference right away. Denzel Washington stepped back onto the stage just as the applause was fading. J.D. Vance was still seated, quieter than before, a little unsure of how to follow what had just unfolded, but the energy had changed. Something heavier now sat in the air, like everyone knew they were watching more than just a debate. The moderator, a respected journalist from The Atlantic, smiled thinly. "Mr. Washington, would you like to offer final thoughts before we close?" Denzel approached the microphone, but paused. His hand briefly touched the inside of his jacket, where the USB and the letter rested. For a moment, he considered staying silent, keeping the secret between himself, Dr. Patrick, and whoever left the message. But then he looked out at the crowd. Young faces, tired eyes, some eager, some angry, some scared. And he knew silence wasn't an option. He stepped forward. "Before we end this," he began, "I want to tell you a story, not from a script, not from a movie, a real one. One that's still unfolding." The moderator tilted her head, surprised. J.D. Vance leaned forward slightly. "The cameras adjusted. Every major news network still live. There's more happening behind these walls than this forum," Denzel said. "More than red versus blue, left versus right. We like to believe we live in a time of reason, but truth doesn't live in sound bites." He paused. "Earlier tonight, I received a message. And then a video. No names, no return address. Just warnings, threats even. Not against me. Against the idea of honesty." Murmurs rippled through the audience. On social media, viewers started screen recording. Denzel looked directly into the nearest camera lens. "There are powerful interests, international ones, who are paying attention to what happens in places like this. Not because of what we say, but because of what we might wake up." J.D. Vance frowned now, visibly confused. "Is this some kind of performance, Mr. Washington?" Denzel turned to him. "No, Senator, this isn't Hollywood. Surveillance, blackmail, a war of silence. I was warned to keep my mouth shut. But the only reason I have this platform is because a professor once told me, your voice is only useful if it costs you something." The audience was frozen. Not a phone dropped. Not a breath wasted. Dr. Patrick, watching from the wings, stood slowly and whispered to himself, "He's opening the door." Back on stage, Denzel reached into his jacket and held up the USB. "This drive contains a recording. It names diplomats. Threats, plans to control student activism before it becomes unrest. It talks about silencing people before they're believed. It talks about us security near the walls shifted uneasily." Two suited men near the exit exchanged glances. "And if they're watching now," Denzel continued, "I want them to know I'm not afraid, and I'm not alone." Suddenly, the sound system crackled. The lights flickered. A second mic, the handheld one left at the moderator's seat, turned on by itself. Then came a voice, not Denzel's, not the moderator's, a voice with a sharp Eastern European accent. "You have said enough." The room gasped. Campus. Security moved quickly, but it was too late. The feed was being hijacked, not by someone in the room, but from a remote uplink. The voice continued, "Do not trust the one beside you. The game is already in motion." Then silence. The screen behind the panel glitched, flickering into a looping message. "Confidence is a liability." The feed went black. Panic started to bubble in the room, but Denzel raised his hand calmly. "Stay seated," he said. "This is the part they're afraid of when we listen together. That's why they tried to hijack the signal." A man from the tech booth rushed down the aisle. Mr. Washington, we traced the audio breach. It didn't come from here. It came from inside a private server housed under the embassy district. Denzel's eyes narrowed. Then we're not just talking anymore, he said. We're at the start of something else. The moderator picked up her earpiece. We're being asked to clear the room. Officials want to secure the perimeter. Denzel looked at the crowd. No, he said. Let them stay. If the truth costs something, let them witness the price. J.D. Vance looked pale now. I don't know what you've pulled us into, but this is above your pay grade. Denzel turned to him. That's the problem, Senator. You think integrity has a pay grade. The cameras came back online, but now a second news crew had joined in, a global one, and they had just begun asking the right questions. The room wasn't the only thing listening. The news trucks had barely cleared the university lawn before whispers began turning into bulletins. The hijacked audio, the looping warning, confidence, is a liability. The mysterious USB drive held up by Denzel Washington on a live international feed. It was no longer just a campus forum. It was now a breach. A political fault line cracking open in real time. But what no one outside the room knew yet was this: the night wasn't over. As the audience reluctantly left the hall under instructions from university security, Denzel was pulled aside by the event moderator. She held out a phone. You need to see this. It was a message from a source she didn't recognize, routed through an encrypted app used by whistleblowers and journalists. The message read, "Your life just became a thread in a much older web. They've noticed. Do not go home." Denzel looked at her. Who sent it? She shook her head. No. Name, no IP trail. But it came from inside the Capitol network. Inside Congress. Yes, and you were just called a national security risk. By someone who works in intelligence oversight. Elsewhere, in a dim room lit only by monitors, two men watched the footage of the forum on a loop. This wasn't supposed to happen, said one, a pale, clean-shaven man in his 40s. Washington was supposed to give a feel-good speech. Instead, he triggered the protocol. Did he know what was on the drive? Asked the other. Doesn't matter now. The world knows something exists, and we need to contain it before it becomes uncontrollable. On one of the screens, a paused frame showed Denzel holding the USB. The man zoomed in. The real question is, who gave it to him? Back on campus, Denzel and the moderator were escorted to a restricted security room beneath the auditorium. Dr. Melvin Patrick was already there, seated, thoughtful, and strangely calm. I expected this, the professor said as Denzel entered. You expected an international warning broadcasted through a mic I didn't even touch. Denzel asked. I expected your voice to finally be too loud for them to ignore the Kathy. Professor replied, and I expected them to panic. Denzel sat. You knew what was on the drive. Dr. Patrick nodded. Not everything, but enough. That drive has layers. The outer ones are warnings, leaks about surveillance projects, disinformation pipelines, strategy to weaken student movements by painting them as foreign-funded. The deeper files, he paused, are not American. The moderator blinked, meaning they're intelligence briefings. From a European agency, years old, names, cross-border operations, cultural sabotage through social media, through universities, even celebrity interviews. Denzel frowned. Why would I be chosen to reveal it? You weren't chosen. You were tested. The room fell silent. Then the moderator stood. If we go public with this, we don't. Dr. Patrick interrupted. Not yet. We verify. We move smart. 'Cause once this starts, the people watching us will make sure it doesn't end with an interview. It ends in ruin or war. Meanwhile, Senator J.D. Vance sat alone in a black SUV outside the university gate. His phone buzzed. A call from an unknown number. He answered. Who is this? Woman's voice replied, cold and smooth. You. We're sloppy. What do you mean? You played into it. You provoked him. You put the camera on him. Now he's the signal. We're off script. Fawn swallowed. I didn't know he'd exactly. You didn't know. That's why we might need someone else. The call ended. Vance looked down at his phone and saw a photo pop up, a surveillance shot of himself walking into the forum earlier. That evening. The message below it read, "There's always another candidate." Back in the security room, Denzel studied the drive again. If this goes deeper than America, he said, we're not dealing with politics anymore. We're dealing with alignment. Dr. Patrick gave him a long look. Yes, and misalignment is what breaks countries. Who else knows about this? Asked the moderator. Patrick replied, only those who understand what kind of war is fought without weapons. And how it ends when the wrong person speaks the right truth. A pause. Then a voice from the hallway. They're here. Someone from the State Department and someone else. Someone else, but before an answer could be given, the door creaked open. Two figures walked in. One was a sharply dressed woman with a diplomatic badge. The other wore a gray suit. No name, no ID, just a single sentence. We're not here to talk. We're here to ask what side you're on. Denzel looked at Dr. Patrick. He nodded once. Then ask, Denzel said. But know this, I'm already standing on it. What they found buried was never meant to surface. The room was still, but the silence had teeth. The woman from the State Department didn't speak right away. She simply placed a slim silver folder on the table, then stepped back like it was radioactive. The man in the gray suit remained by the door, watchful, silent. His badge was blank, not federal, not military. Something in between. Denzel looked at the folder. What's in it? The woman gave a tight smile, the kind of file people once died to keep out of sight. And now, someone wants it in your hands. She leaned in, lowering her voice. This folder was not supposed to leave Brussels, not without clearance from at least 3 allied agencies. But someone placed your name on the recipient log. You. Denzel didn't move. He just stared at the seal on the folder. A stylized falcon, its wings crossed. Dr. Patrick's eyes widened slightly. He recognized it. That's ISIS. The woman nodded. European Counterintelligence Service. This came from one of their black archives, shut down years ago, quietly, but not emptied. Denzel slowly opened the folder. Inside, surveillance stills, handwritten notes, audio transcripts, in 3 languages. Every page marked eyes only, but one image stopped him cold. A photograph. Grainy, old, faded from age and light exposure. It was a young man, mid-20s, standing outside a training camp in North Africa. Not military, not terrorist, something stranger. A ghost unit. The man looked familiar. Denzel turned. To Dr. Patrick, who had gone pale. You know him? Denzel asked. Patrick didn't answer right away. Then he whispered, yes, that's your father. Silence. I thought he died in a car crash before I was born, Denzel said. That's what we all believed, said the professor. But I never saw the body. I only saw the casket. Closed. No press. No photos. Just silence and fast burial. The gray-suited man finally spoke, his voice calm but cold. Because he wasn't supposed to die. He was supposed to disappear. In a secure monitoring facility across town, Senator J.D. Vance paced behind tinted glass. He was watching the same photos now, beamed to him through a secure channel. The voice on his phone returned. The woman, always calm. Now you understand why Denzel was dangerous. Vance replied, you're telling me his father was a covert agent? More than that, he was a builder. Of what? Networks. Hidden ones. Inside Europe. Across Africa. Even inside the U.S. government. Why would someone want Denzel to know this now? Because the son carries the voice. But the father left the map. What kind of map? a fail-safe, a system of truths that could collapse the facade if spoken clearly enough and by the right person. Someone with a global platform. J.D. Vance was quiet for a long time, then asked, "Are we the facade?" The voice paused, then answered, "We are the furniture. The facade is much older than all of us." Back in the university basement, the woman from the State Department took out a small black phone. "You have 12 hours, she told Denzel. "After that, this is no longer yours to hold." Denzel looked up. "What happens in 12 hours? The gray-suited man answered, "A summit begins in Geneva. It's one of the biggest in decades. Trade, cyber law, energy corridors. But behind those doors, a second meeting will happen. Unofficial off-record. About alignment. Alignment. Ask the moderator." "Global narrative architecture," the woman said. "Who controls what people believe is happening in the world? What is truth? What is forgery? What is agenda?" Dr. Patrick added, "And who gets erased for asking the wrong question?" Denzel closed the folder slowly. "You want me to go? There. We don't want you to. We need you to," she said, "because your name is already on the manifest. Someone invited you days ago, using your real diplomatic credentials from a film festival in Vienna." Denzel laughed bitterly. "So this was planned?" She shook her head. "No, this was predicted. But now it's unfolding. And you're in the center of it." Later that night, Denzel sat alone in an unmarked car driving through the outskirts of town. Rain tapped the windows like a Morse code no one could decode. In his hand, the photo of his father. In his mind, the words of Dr. Patrick echoing again and again. He was supposed to disappear. But disappearances left echoes, documents, half-truths, secrets that surfaced only when the right frequency was hit. And tonight, somehow, the frequency had been hit. Denzel pulled out the USB drive again, plugging it into a secure offline tablet. He scrolled past the superficial warnings, past the disinformation maps, into the locked layer labeled Sable Doctrine. It needed one key to open, a phrase, and Denzel knew what it was. He typed slowly, "Confidence is a liability." Screen blinked. Files began to open, one after another. But the one at the top stopped him cold again. It was a dossier, not of his father, of him. Labeled Primary Candidate Phoenix Structure. His hands went cold, not just because of the secrets, but because this meant only one thing. He wasn't just the messenger anymore. He was the plan. The signal that triggered everything Geneva was covered in fog. Outside the steel land-glass fortress that hosted the International Strategic Forum, world leaders, diplomats, and media crowded checkpoints. Security drones buzzed overhead. Every step was tracked, every whisper potentially logged. But inside, it was quieter, too quiet. Denzel Washington, dressed not as a celebrity, but as a delicate dark suit, plain tie walked through the rear entrance of the building. No press, no red carpet. Just credentials flashed and eyes watching him a bit too long. The sealed black folder he carried was now digitized and encrypted inside the secure tablet tucked under his arm. Its contents: a buried history, a hidden map, a dormant system called the Sable Doctrinand, a file that identified him not as a bystander, but a candidate for something larger than he could have imagined. By the time he reached the classified floor marked Private Briefings Only, his calm exterior was a mask. Inside, a storm was brewing. At the far end of the conference hall, the moderator, an older statesman from the UN with a reputation for neutrality, nodded as Denzel entered. "We've been expecting you," the man said softly. Denzel gave a dry smile. "That makes one of us." Seated around the curved table were 11 figures. Not just politicians, there were media barons, defense analysts, and one man who used to run an energy cartel before becoming a consultant for geopolitical transitions. They were not named on any schedule. This meeting did not exist. It never would. A woman from the French delegation cleared her throat. Mr. Washington, your presence here is unconventional. Denzel replied, so is your agenda. She smirked, but didn't disagree. He placed the tablet in the center of the table. This was delivered to me less than 48 hours ago. The folder was marked ISIS. It links hidden networks, media manipulation, elections, trade wars under one doctrine. Most of you know it as rumor. Some of you helped build it. The room didn't stir, but the silence meant something. He continued. And yet, someone fed it to me, not to expose it, to activate it. I want to know why. A man from the British intelligence circle leaned forward. Because the original plan failed. Years ago, the assets went dark. But now, with AI warfare, narrative control, and election destabilization, the pieces can move again. And the system needs a voice. Why me? Denzel asked. I'm an actor, not a spy. The older UN moderator spoke up, his voice calm. No, you are an anchor, trusted across cultures. You've played presidents, kings, traitors, prophets. People listened. But the real power isn't what you say, it's that you can say it and still be heard. That is rare, another delegate added. Your father built the network. You can ignite it. Denzel sat back, stunned. What happens if I refuse? He asked. The woman from France responded without blinking. Then someone else takes your place. Maybe less careful, maybe less alive. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in a CNN control room in New York, a producer stared at a blinking alert that shouldn't exist. A live stream had been embedded deep inside their servers, pre-recorded, encrypted, scheduled for forced broadcast. The file was labeled the Phoenix Message Denzel.w.codex. The countdown read 0 hours 42 minutes and 17 seconds. The producer turned pale. He called the director. We didn't schedule this. We didn't authorize it. But it's locked in. Override all. Global feeds in 42 minutes unless someone stops it. The director looked at the file signature. ISIS, Gangate, Level 9. He didn't speak. He just said, call Atlanta, call Langley, and tell them it's starting. Back in Geneva, Denzel was staring at a hologram now projected above the table. It was a real-time map of influence information corridors, political instability zones, proxy media control woven into a spiderweb of power that spanned 47 countries. Dr. Patrick's voice echoed in his memory. Your voice can open doors or start fires. He looked around the table again. This system Phoenix structure, what does it do exactly? He asked. A delegate from the Baltic states responded, it doesn't do. It enables truth bombs, signal disruption, leader replacement. The doctrine activates based on a tipping point, one voice, heard globally, that challenges the accepted narrative and provides a new one. Denzel leaned in. And what if I say nothing? The man replied, then someone will detonate chaos instead and blame you for staying silent. At that moment, in a university auditorium across the ocean, a live stream countdown had quietly begun in the background of every smart screen. Students noticed first. The broadcast that changed everything. The world didn't stop when the message began. It trembled quietly like the way glass hums before shattering. The broadcast wasn't introduced. There was no logo, no theme music, no cue. It simply appeared. On every screen across North America, Europe, parts of Asia. Even in firewalled zones of the Middle East and China, it forced its way through. Morning news segments froze mid-sentence. Streaming services flickered out. Military monitors in closed NATO bunkers showed it, and even jumbotrons in Times Square cut to black before displaying the live feed. Denzel Washington, alone, standing at a podium in an undisclosed location. Behind him, the logo of the Sable Doctriana, dark phoenix rising through a ring of fire. A symbol that hadn't been seen publicly in over 3 decades. He didn't look like an actor now. Looked like a man who'd seen the machine and decided to speak anyway. He spoke slowly, clearly, not with rage, but with reason. Like someone telling the truth because the weight of silence had finally become unbearable. I was invited here as a guest, a voice. But what I found was something else, a system designed to fracture facts. A doctrine once built to protect democracies from digital invasions, but now twisted to serve only those who control it. He paused. They call it the Sable Protocol, a trigger system. Political misdirection hidden as entertainment. Narrative. Engineering built into media and education. A playbook to bend truth at scale. At the Geneva Forum, panic had erupted. Some delegates tried to cut the feed, but they couldn't. The activation code had come from inside the ESA's servers. It was a dead man's switch. Dr. Patrick had installed it in 1986. If certain files were accessed, the message was unstoppable. Back in the U.S., J.D. Vance was pacing in his secure office. His aide's voice cracked through the speaker. "Sir, all major channels are carrying it. And the view count AI says engagement has broken every known record. It's in the billions now. Has Langley responded? Not yet. But the State Department just received encrypted packets from at least 3 allied nations. They want clarification on what? Whether this is a confession or a declaration." On screen, Denzel continued. He exposed how certain political victories were won through behavioral manipulation, not just policy. He named no parties, no presidents, just mechanisms, algorithms, pacts signed in invisible ink. Then came the flashpoint. He placed a sealed envelope onto the podium. This is the Phoenix binder. It contains names, dates, funding chains. Internal memos. If anything happens to me, it auto-drops to the top 10 investigative journalists in the world. 5 are already watching. 2 are in this room. Cameras panned, slightly revealing a few stunned reporters, including one from The Guardian, clutching a phone with a blinking blue alert on the screen. I was told that telling this story would burn bridges. But if the bridges are poisoned, maybe they were meant to burn. In living rooms across the globe, families sat stunned. On military bases, officers paused training exercises to watch. In classrooms, students whispered to one another, "Is this real?" At the United Nations, a delegate from South Korea turned to his American counterpart. "If this is staged, it's the greatest performance in human history. If it's your country just detonated the world's trust." Then came the twist. The screen behind Denzel changed. It showed archived footage never before seen of a young U.S. intelligence officer in 1987 being sworn into a black budget committee, known as Project Horizon. The officer was unmistakable. It was J.D. Vance's father, a man thought long deceased. "This system wasn't born from evil," Denzel said. "It was born from fear. But fear is not a foundation." A beat of silence. We have a choice. Restore truth or continue this great lie. In the final moments of the feed, Denzel looked directly into the camera. "To the students watching, you are the firewall now. What you believe, what you question, what you share. That's the new battlefield." He reached for the folder. "I was told that my voice could break the script. If that's true, then let this be the moment." The screen faded to black. Single phrase appeared. Sable Protocol deactivated. And then nothing. Fallout was instant. Within 24 hours, emergency sessions were called in Washington, Brussels, and London. Intelligence agencies scrambled to verify every file. News anchors cried live on camera, and whistleblowers long. Silence started to come forward. J.D. Vance appeared at a press conference looking hollow. He confirmed the identity of the man in the footage. "That was my father, and I didn't know." Reporters didn't ask questions. They just took notes. Denzel disappeared for 72 hours. The world speculated. Some said he'd been taken into custody. Others whispered he was being protected by retired operatives. Hashtags like hashtag Phoenix Broadcast and hashtag Denzel Truth trended for days. Then quietly, he reappeared walking into a small church in Newark. He didn't speak, just sat in the last pew, listening to the choir. That night, as journalists pieced together the Sable Doctrines remains, one chilling truth settled over everyone. Denzel hadn't planned to lead a revolution. He simply refused to be part of a lie. And in doing so, he handed the world a rare and dangerous gift. Not a scandal, but a second chance.